Dobry den, mnie звати Maya Pankiw. Hello, my name is Maya Pankiw, and today I will be interviewing Nadia Demko in the 13th episode of our Alumni Success series. Hi, Nadia. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Maya. Thanks for having me.
So, born in Winnipeg to immigrants, the Ukrainian community has always been a focus in Nadia's life through organizations such as Plast, Rusalka Dance Ensemble, Saints Volodymyr and Olha Cathedral Choir, among others. Upon moving to Montreal to pursue science and medical studies, joining the Ukrainian community was a priority for Nadia. She soon became active through student organizations like the McGill University Students Association, eventually serving as president, as well as the Ukrainian Canadian Students Union as secretary, executive vice president, and alumni director. Throughout her student years, she organized and participated in many film screenings, protests, awareness campaigns, book launches, concerts, policy meetings, and congresses. She was also a youth counselor for both Help Us Help the Children and Plast camps. Since becoming a physician, Nadia joined the Ukrainian National Federation Montreal, first as an active donations committee member, and now as a board member and the first chair of the cultural committee. Since early 2021, Nadia organized multiple cultural events, both virtual and in person, with the aim of showcasing professional Ukrainian artists and high-caliber Ukrainian art forms. Notably, she co-organized a concert marking the 30th anniversary of Ukraine's independence last year that showcased Ukrainian classical and jazz music. This led to the increased use of Montreal's UNF Hall, including recent fundraising concerts for the war relief effort. Since the start of Russia's horrific war in Ukraine, Nadia has also been a strong advocate on the cultural front of Russia's war in Ukraine, publishing in Montreal's La Presse and the classical musical journal La Scène. This past November, she co-organized a mixed classical and lyrical music concert commemorating the 90th anniversary of the Holodomor, 90th anniversary of the UNF, and 150th birthday of the Ukrainian soprano Solomia Krushtalenka. Nadia is a pathologist who obtained her Bachelor of Science, Master's of Science, and medical degree and pathology residency training, all from McGill University. She will be starting a hematopathology fellowship subspecialization in 2023 at Weill Cornell University at New York Presbyterian Hospital, with a plan to work as a staff pathologist in an academic center thereafter. Nadia has been involved in various leadership, teaching, and research opportunities throughout her training. She was a past chief resident who helped transition the academic residency program to an online learning format in the early days of the pandemic. She has also served as a board member of the Association of Residents of McGill, as well as a past member of both McGill's postgraduate education and the Royal College of Canada committees. She is a resident teacher in the program, leading various small groups for the undergraduate medical program and teaching sessions for students and residents. She also participated in a medical education elective and co-developed a novel curriculum. Nadia has published in various areas of pathology, including hematopathology, respiratory, genitourinary, and gynecologic pathology. Her present research interests include flow cytometry and machine learning with hematopathology. Thank you for joining us today, Nadia.
Thank you, Maya, for the introduction, and thank you to SUSK for having me here.
So to start off with our first question, where did you go to university and what did you study?
So thanks for the question. I've basically been at McGill for all my degrees. So I started with a bachelor's in neuroscience, in science. And basically in neuroscience, it's a very vast field. So I had the opportunity to take a bunch of different courses ranging from psychology to computer science to neurophysiology, neuroethics. So really a multidisciplinary field. And I think that doing that degree allowed me to see how to approach a field from multiple angles. And then basically I graduated from my bachelor's a little bit in the off season in the fall, and I started a master's of science, and specifically in biomedical ethics at McGill. And this I did while applying to medical school. And basically my master's was in clinical trial ethics. So looking at how research is translated from the preclinical world, so studies in animals, to the clinical world, so studies in humans, and looking at how they correlate. But basically it also gave me foundational knowledge in statistics, systematic review design, so really some core skills there. And then ultimately I got into medical school that year and chose McGill for a few reasons. You could say, I guess, for money and for love. So tuition's cheaper. Montreal life is pretty great and living expenses are quite reasonable. But my partner at Pankiw actually also was living and going to medical school here as well. And I guess a little aside about him is that he was actually the SUSK president when SUSK was revived in 2007. So maybe we're all kind of partly here because of him. Basically then I was in medical school, and medical school is quite all encompassing. You get to experience a vast amount of different experiences. So everything from birth, I mean, you're literally there at deliveries, helping with them, to death, of course, and helping families and patients, being present with them for that. And I found myself, so basically in medical school, you go through a lot of different rotations to kind of experience the different subspecializations that exist. And I found myself drawn to the field of oncology, which is the study of cancer. I thought just the ability for cells to just proliferate and like take over was quite fascinating, of course, also terrifying. But that was sort of where my interest lied. And basically I had a chance to do different specialties and saw that pathology is really actually at the heart of oncology, because pathology is the diagnosis of cancer, among other diseases. But basically that diagnosis is what's used to guide treatments and prognosis for patients. So it's a very, very key aspect of the field. And that's sort of what I decided to go into, and here I am. So basically then I started a pathology residency training or postgraduate medical training in anatomic pathology, and I'm presently in my 5th year of that.
It's very interesting. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So our second question is, what was your involvement in the Ukrainian community during your post-secondary education?
So I was born and raised in Winnipeg and basically moved to Montreal at the age of 18. For my undergraduate degree, I was fortunate enough to have a scholarship, but having grown up in Winnipeg's very, very vibrant Ukrainian community, I was in PLAS, the Rusalka, church choir, I was really looking for that sort of similar connection when I moved here, and basically discovered the McGill Ukrainian Students Association, or known as MUSA, at a clubs fair very early in 1st year. And this is basically where I found my home away from home. I got involved as a member at first, had various roles, and then eventually was president and remained involved for a while. And basically we were quite involved. I mean, we of course had the usual social events, zabavas, pub crawls. But more than that, we were also quite focused in a few areas, like history. For example, we had an awareness week, I remember, for the Holodomor, and had film screenings of Okradna Zemlya by Yuri Luhove. Timothy Snyder came to talk about his book. We had book launches with Andrea Chalupa, of course. So that his history and raising awareness about Ukraine's history was quite important for us. Being involved politically was also important for us. Euromaidan started around the time of the end of my undergraduate, and we were organizing protests and very involved with that. We had even a Q&A with Sviatoslav Vakarchuk from Okan Elze on modern Ukraine. So that was really, really a great panel. I remember about kind of the present situation at that time in Ukraine. We were involved with humanitarian projects. I think a lot of us had that sort of focus because we were kind of gearing towards medical school and I guess similar fields, healthcare fields. So we had film screenings about human trafficking. We were raising awareness about healthcare disparities in Ukraine. There was a film, The English Surgeon, that we screened. We did fundraisers for Help Us Help the Children. Among other things. So that was the humanitarian focus. And then finally, I would say the cultural aspect of Musa was really important for us. We organized this really high caliber, excellent musical concert in partnership with the School of Music at McGill. So we had basically professional students in voice and in piano who helped us with this, who performed in this concert, and they sang only Ukrainian repertoire. So it was really a phenomenal event. I actually participated as well. I was, I think, the only non-music student, so that was a little bit terrifying, but a great experience. We held pisanke making workshops that I was facilitating, and gardane workshops too. So really, like, we were quite active, and I think it was a really vibrant part of all our lives. We were, of course, within our respective fields in university, but I think we really built this strong community outside of that. And then I got involved, or a few of us from SUSK actually got involved at the national level of SUSK, because I think what's incredible about SUSK is you see what the power of just coming all together nationally to work on projects, and that you felt right away being at Congress. I remember my first few congresses, just that feeling of I want to get involved, and I want to do something with the students across the country. So first I served as secretary, eventually I was executive vice president, and finally alumni director, like yourself. Although I have to commend you, this is an excellent initiative, and I have to say this is really incredible work that you're doing, and we were not as active as you were in that respect. So congrats for that, Maya. What else? So we were involved, we planned a Congress, or a few congresses, that is. We were involved, we actually helped get the national coordinator role. So it was our year that actually went to the UCC Dragon's Den competition and secured funding for that. So just even the skills you get from helping on a project like that is incredible. Like, being part of the write-up of a proposal for a Dragon's Den is you gain a lot in terms of how to write a good and effective proposal, and how to manage funds, build a timeline, etc. And I also was actually, as part of my role in SUSK, I actually joined the train of Ukrainian immigrants to mark the 120 years of Ukrainian Canadian settlement in Canada. So basically, I think I hopped on, I think it was in Winnipeg, and I only did a part of the leg, but nonetheless, just meeting, it was at that time Dr. Ihor Ostash, the Ukrainian ambassador to Canada, was on that train. So speaking with him, among many other really interesting Ukrainians and Ukrainian Canadians, learning about the history of Ukrainian Canadians was quite the experience. And just being able to ride the train and kind of imagine yourself in that role of a Ukrainian settler, kind of, well, basically a first wave Ukrainian settler, was really incredible. So that I think sums up sort of what I did in my time as a student in both MUSA and SUSK. But really, I think that the experiences really gave me a lot of skills, like I mentioned, just writing proposals, organizing events, and also taught me a lot, taught me about my own history, about the political situation, and the importance of advocating for Ukraine and Ukrainians.
Thank you. It's very interesting to hear that, the initiatives that were started when you were on SUSK they're still happening. The national coordinator is a very important role that, we're so lucky to have. I can't imagine not having one. So, thank you for getting that one started for us.
It was definitely teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Like, it was a group, but that was our year. So yeah, and we recognized even then the importance of having that position, because obviously it has so much more potential when you have that role involved, and someone kind of working on SUSK full-time or nearly full-time.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does help with the growth of all the initiatives that we do. So for our next question, what is your current occupation, and can you tell me a little bit about your career path that led you to this occupation?
Yeah, sure, Maya. So basically, I guess my career trajectory, I kind of explained it a part of it in the question about education, but basically I'm still in my postgraduate medical training, so in pathology. And a little bit more, I guess, about pathology. It's, so I said a diagnostic specialty. So basically what that means is anytime tissue is taken out of a patient, so be it biopsy or a whole organ, the pathologist is the one who basically examines it. So you look at it both grossly, which means to the naked eye, as well as under the microscope, so microscopically. And now we're also looking at various protein expression of tissues, and we do molecular genetic testing as well. And we basically use all that as well as the clinical information provided to us to ultimately give a diagnosis. And then that diagnosis, as I mentioned, is what guides treatment for patients and also determines their prognosis. So what that means is clinical progression. So it's that diagnostic element is super key in patient care. And what I love about pathology is it's essentially like solving a puzzle. You have to put like I said, kind of a bunch of pieces together to ultimately come at the diagnosis. And I think there's essentially almost never a dull moment. It's very rare that I'm bored at my job. So I think I'm really lucky for that. So I'm in my 5th and last year of training, and basically moving to New York City next year to pursue subspecialization within pathology, so hematopathology. And what that is the study of disorders of the blood and lymph nodes, so like leukemias and lymphomas. And as you mentioned, I'll be doing that at Weill Cornell in New York City. And basically what fellowship means is it's even more like specialized training, and hopefully the last step before getting kind of the full-time staff job. And I guess along the way in my career, I've been involved in leadership aspects. So I was past chief resident, as you mentioned, and on various committees, and I've been involved in research as well, and about to start a project also in flow cytometry, and I've been involved in teaching stuff as well. I'm a resident teacher in the program, and took a elective course as well, and helped kind of develop a new curriculum. But basically, I think, all these, the leadership, the research, the teaching, that's all, I think, part of the skills that I got to be able to sort of handle all that. And I guess we'll get into that a little bit, is thanks to, the things I do outside of work. Is I think it gives you a lot of, teaches you a lot how to balance different parts of your life and different challenges, and how to continue to do all those things. And I think I like to think as part of my career is also my involvement a little bit in the community, because they definitely feed on each other. And sort of, as you mentioned, since or I guess, yeah, after postgraduate, after my involvement as a student, I've been involved with the Ukrainian National Federation in Montreal. And basically, I'm a board member there. And I was the first cultural director, so I've had the chance now to actually revitalize the hall a little bit. We've had many concerts, and it's been really exciting to see us use this hall again. And since the start of the war, really, I think advocating on the cultural front has been super important, because the war is obviously a physical, very real, terrible war, but there's an element of cultural warfare here as well. Russia's most definitely trying to kill Ukrainian culture, and I think people who are advocates for culture, this is a time to stand up for that, and to write op-eds, write articles, hold concerts to promote Ukrainian culture. So this is, I think, a time for those of us who really love Ukrainian culture. It's a time to stand up for that and to advocate more than ever. So yeah, that's essentially been my career path, and sort of the involvement I've been doing since being a student.
Yeah, thank you. That's it's great to hear that even in such a demanding field that you have the time to allocate to, promoting our culture and doing what you can, especially during this time. So for our next question, how do you think your involvement in your university's Ukrainian Student Club and the broader Ukrainian community helped you in advancing your career and personal development? I know you've touched on this a little bit, but
yeah. No, I think, I started to allude to it, but basically, so I don't believe in multitasking. I think that's not a thing. I think you can't do multiple things at the same time, but what you can do is prioritize. And I think being involved in the Ukrainian community has definitely taught me skills in prioritization. So, good time management. And that I've transferred to sort of all aspects of my life. I think my ability to sort of do my caseload and then turn to research, and then also be involved in some sort of leadership committee meeting, and maybe give a teaching session all in a day as I think possible, because I had significant training during my undergraduate days in Musa and SUSK on doing multiple things not at the same time, but kind of in concert. So I think time management is a huge skill that you gain from being involved in SUSK and Musa and in your USO, I mean. Secondly, I think just the learning how an organization is run. I really learned, Robert's rules, how to form resolutions, raise motions, taking appropriate minutes, all those seemingly mundane things, but things that are very important to the running of a healthy organization. I learned all of that with SUSK, and I think I've used those skills and transferred it to other aspects of my life, both as when I've been a board member with the UNF, but also when I was involved in the committees on a residency level. So I think, those are skills that you bring in and you bring to the table when you're on these committees. You raise points about, hey, maybe we should look back to our terms of reference. Hey, maybe we should to use Robert's rules to run this meeting. So I think those are really important skills that SUSK really develops. And I think thirdly, I would say the communication and organizational skills that you gain in your USO and in SUSK are high yield. I mean, basically, you're when you're running an event in the community, you have to, often use multiple, you have to work with many people, you have to, be on these collaborative teams. And I think that's highly transferable to any job, really. Even recently when I organized this concert, I co-organized it with my colleague from the Orchestre Classique de Montréal. We needed volunteers. We had to work with our board. So you're always collaborating. And I think SUSK really gears you up to do that, to work in very functional teams. You realize actually after how functional SUSK is, it's really impressive. So yeah, those would be, those I think are my main takeaways. And I think, yeah, time management, running an organization, and organizational skills are huge, and you really develop those at SUSK.
Yeah, definitely. As a member of SUSK right now, I'm learning those skills, and it's definitely, you can feel the push, and you can see how it's important to learn to prioritize your time and to learn how to balance. I think that's something I've been on SUSK this is my third year now. So it's something that I've learned over the past 2 years. It's an important skill, and I've seen also how to transfer it into my life. So it's good to hear that, this is a transferable skill into even after my post-secondary degree. Yeah, so that's fantastic to hear. Thank you.
Very transferable. Yeah. So good job that you're third year on SUSK. That's amazing. Yeah. It's great. No, I really I think, because sometimes people have these, these thoughts. So if I'm doing Ramada stuff, it's taking away from the stuff that I can do, towards my career, or towards, very, very specific things in your career, or, other things in life. But I think it's important to recognize that the skills really do transfer. And, and the thing I didn't also mention is the networks. I think that's huge as well. You still go to weddings of people who are in your executive on SUSK. So these are lifelong relationships and friendships that are strong. And you never, I think, you never know how it'll play out in the future. But I think you gain a lot just from having those connections across the country, right? Because SUSK really ties together students across the country, and then at some point you're young professionals across the country. So I think that's really cool that you maintain that network.
Yeah, definitely. That's nice at Congress to, bring everybody together. We had our first in-person Congress since the pandemic last May. And just seeing everybody, even the board members, I had been on the board for 2 years and I hadn't met a portion of the board in person because they were from different parts of Canada. So it's really cool to be able to create those cross Canada connections.
Yeah, wow. I forgot that there was a pandemic and that changed a few things in our lives, but wow. Yeah. Well, good for you. I'm glad you guys finally met and that you're still with SUSK. So that's great.
Yeah. So our last question is, just do you have any tips for current students?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. First, I would say develop a niche that is your own, that you're passionate about. But also, I think it's important, especially in this day and age, to keep an open mind. I think it's important to recognize that we don't even know what jobs are going to look like in 20, 30 years. It's changing so fast, the technology, everything really. So I think keeping your mind open to possible future career opportunities is important. And I think setting yourself up with some foundational skills is always a good idea. So, if you have an interest in math and science, I would actually really recommend gaining skills in, programming, statistics, because that will usually almost definitely come in handy. But I think the important thing is to recognize that, your job might not be the same in 10, 20, 30 years. And so you have to be able to sort of adapt to that. And I think the more you set yourself up with a versatile set of skills, the better you'll be when the change comes, right? Or the more prepared you'll be when the change comes. So I think that's first and foremost. I think also I would really recommend students spend time developing your softer skills. So, I mentioned some of them: time management, communication, organizational skills, but I think we often overlook them, at least in the sciences and in medicine sometimes, but I think it's really important in the real world. And I think you get noticed for having them at work, and you're appreciated by your colleagues, your bosses. And I think it's important to be able to develop those skills, and those don't just come. So I think, being involved in the Hromada and in SUSK are venues to help you develop those skills, most definitely. And I think thirdly is, I would say, think selflessly sometimes. So I know it's hard. We're all often caught up in our day-to-day, trying to succeed in our own career and trying to do the next thing to kind of move up. But I think remembering that it's important to give back to the Hromada, and it's important to, so if you have the time to volunteer, to continue to volunteer, if you have the money to start to donate, but these are all the things this is really important to continue building our society and making basically life more interesting. And I think, we now see more than ever at a time of war the importance of giving back. I think, we have lots of new arrivals from Ukraine coming, who are in need of a lot of different kinds of support. So I think there are a lot of opportunities right now to really give back. And so I think that's something I would really recommend students get involved in, because it's kind of, like I say, it ties into some of the other concepts we've been talking about, but your giving to the community will always, it's sort of a give and take relationship. And I think you'll get a lot out of being involved in the community. So yeah.
Definitely. I thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your tips. I really enjoyed hearing what you had to say. I think our students will also really enjoy it. So thank you very much for joining us today, Nadia. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
It was a great pleasure speaking to you too, Maya. And thanks again to SUSK for having me.
Of course.
Слава Україні!